What's going on? Welcome back to Financial Journey. So today I want to talk to you about Lucid. I want to go over what's really causing this volatility, if it's justified or not. Before I get into any of that, make sure to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. And with that said, let's get right to it. So right now it is down 5.56%. We are currently in power hour as we speak, but very low volume. So 23.8 million shares being traded, 41.2 is the average. Most of the volume done today is either shorts or algorithmic trading because big money isn't really getting into Lucid, so they're not really buying the dip, and you can tell that based on this. So these are the transactions above $100,000 on the secondary market. So today, as well as Friday, big money just was not getting into Lucid, which is kind of weird because on Thursday there was a abnormal amount of buying. So when it comes to it, big money is just clearly seeing a overdone market, and this is why a lot more analysts have started to come out saying that essentially the market does need to cool off. The overall trend is still very much there, but it does need to cool off. And even looking at the fear and greed index, it is at 80. So crazy stuff is happening. When it comes to Lucid, there has been no news, no SEC filings. This was posted a couple of days back, so more of a, I guess, a conversation or a charged conversation. And this was for the Geneva Motor Show. So I'll play this near the tail end because Peter does say some pretty cool things in here. One of which was ESS. So he talked on the whole Wonder Box and essentially how Lucid could charge houses. So kind of boggles my mind during the last earnings why nobody did ask anything associated to ESS, because clearly there is some updates, but now we'll just have to wait until next earnings to pose that question. But still, I'm going to play this near the tail end of the video. Also, I'll have a link to this in the description below for you to kind of take a look at. Lucid is getting dragged down though because, and also the whole EV market, because of what I mentioned coming from analysts that the market is just too hot, and specific to EVs, there was this. So it does look like there is a somewhat price war occurring out in China between BYD, NIO, Tesla as well. And because of Tesla's relation to that, whatever happens to Tesla, the good, the bad, and the ugly, it does cause a trickle-down effect. Even though I do anticipate probably 2024 there to be more rate cuts even for Lucid, but that's a whole nother subject because there's going to be a lot of competition. It seems like everyone and their dog is going to be making some variation of a EV, including SUVs. So there's going to be a lot of competition in the coming years. So you're going to see a lot more of these, I guess, battles, if you want to call it that. So because of this, the EV market is getting hit extra hard today. But interestingly enough, though, I do feel that Lucid is getting overdone. And shorts, I always like to look at what shorts are doing because it gives you a good viewpoint if it's justified or not. And right now, surprisingly, shorts are returning 3.46 million shares. 28.56% of the free float is being shorted. 249.83 million shares overall are being shorted, and cost per average is 45.28%. Even looking at the intraday on what shorts are doing today, straight out the gate, they are returning. So they're taking advantage of the massive amount of fear that's in the market right now and taking the opportunity to return some shares. Kind of sucks overall. And like I already said, a lot of the volume being done today is either just shorts, or I guess attributed to shorts, or just algorithmic trading. So AI is just being told, hey, look, Tesla's going down, bring EVs down. So that's kind of what is aiding this. And so in reality, shorts closing out some of the position is very bullish and does kind of mean that this is a overdone and not really justified sell-off for Lucid, which kind of makes sense if you think about it. There was no new analyst ratings, nothing along those lines being done today. But one thing I actually did want to bring up is when it comes down to shorting, so just going back here for a second, over the last several days, shorts have actually started to return some shares. So I don't know if there's some correlation because when I did bring this up, there was big money buying massively. There was a big transaction plus tons, as you can kind of see right here, but there was one for 116.9 million, and this was done on Thursday last week. Ever since this day, shorts have been returning some shares. So I did a video on Thursday saying, like, does someone know something? There's like some big entity clearly is getting into Lucid. So why? And ever since then, shorts have been returning. So I don't know if there's some correlation or maybe shorts are anticipating something to come, But this is very peculiar because even with a lot of the other growth stocks today, shorts are increasing. So again, might mean something, might not mean anything. I'm not a financial advisor. You guys do your own due diligence. As far as options, $410,000 in calls being purchased versus 450 in puts. But sentiment-wise, 35% of all the options being done today are optimistic. Clearly, just a lot of people are taking advantage of the volatility with Lucid just to collect some premiums. So a good percentage of the daily volume today is neutral. Of the call options that are being purchased, there's a consensus for it to be above 350. And then looking at puts, it's anticipated to be sub $3. So nothing really crazy to write home about. And when it comes down to some support and resistance points with it, currently at $3.15, it is between this S1 and the pivot. So today it actually did have a lot of good momentum initially, I guess pre-market. So it was above this pivot point. So $3.26 is that next strong resistance level. And then 309 is that strong support. In fact, it did bounce off of this S1. So that's generally a very good sign. Aside from that, 299 slash clearly $3 is going to be the following support level. And when it comes to the technicals, so going into my video yesterday, I did say that there's going to be a lot of resistance above Lucid, and definitely something needed to come out specific for Lucid for it to really push higher, because it does have that central boiling band and also 50-day moving average, which generally is a very difficult resistance point for Lucid in among itself. So right above Lucid, it's kind of a very big wall, and it did attempt to transition from the lower to the higher percentile over the last couple of trading days, just not really enough there. So given the pullback, that might be actually very healthy because it's causing the stochastic to go down a little bit, kind of resetting the technicals. So going into the next couple of days, hopefully there will be a little bit more momentum on Wednesday and also Friday, two very big indicators linked to consumers. So if that is overwhelmingly positive, then stocks such as Lucid could go up as a result. So we'll just have to wait and see. Number of retail investors have been getting out, it looks like, based on the momentum indicator ever since it looks like on the 15th, so 1 week prior to their earnings. So let me know your thoughts on Lucid. So overall, the technicals are kind of pulling back somewhat. The options activity is somewhat neutral. And when it comes down to shorting, I see that as very bullish and very questionable. So once again, maybe something big is coming, just the bigger money does know, just us small fish are just kind of left in the dust. We'll just have to wait and see. So like I mentioned, I'm just going to quickly play this video. I'm going to have a link to this in the description as well, because there's a lot of good things that he does say on here, kind of what drove and is going to continue to drive Lucid's innovation. And he does talk on ESS. So highly recommend you guys listening to this. It does have a lot of good information. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. And as well, take advantage of this promo, link in the description below and also the comments to Moomoo, where you can get 5 free shares. So take advantage of that. With that said, appreciate all of you watching.
That's what you get at events like this, a buzz. You get the sound of people having conversation. You get the sound of people talking about the industry, about business, sharing opportunity, talking about challenges, thinking about change. Yes, you can do that on a Zoom call, I know you can, or Teams, or the other things. But you can only, at an event where the industry gathers, find those moments of happenstance, find their moments where people can show the glory of their ambition, of their product, of their proposition. So I just want to listen to it again, because I've missed it, I must be honest. So, that being said, I would like now to talk about navigating the future of electric vehicles, which is one heck of a topic, and invite to the stage, please, Luca Di Maio, Peter Rawlinson, and Silvio Angori. Thank you. If you'd like to take that. Wow, what a trio of CEOs that are all right in the heart of the action. I feel very, very lucky, very privileged, but don't think that means I'm going to let you off the hook and make this easy. We're going to talk about the real, if you like, meat and potatoes, the real stuff that's going on. Because I know that's what you're talking about, Luca. I've read some of your things on LinkedIn. I've been on LinkedIn a little while, so it's Good to see you there too. But first of all, I think it would only be appropriate and polite to certainly congratulate, first of all, Luca and his Renault team for European Car of the Year, the Scenic E-Tech, and for the launch of the Renault 5. Could we give that a big round of applause, please? And then Peter Rawlinson and Lucid with not only all the wonderful product, but particularly the reveal for Gravity. This groundbreaking, incredibly innovative, I'm sure he's going to tell us a bit about that. Yeah, Lucid Gravity, that wonderful SUV. So again, round of applause, I think, please, for Peter. And then Pininfarina. What is any more glorious than Pininfarina? I don't know. When you look at what that company stands for, the incredible heritage it has from Mr. Battista Pininfarina all those years ago, creating this, yes, glory, art, innovation, all these wonderful things, and we're going to talk about that. But can we just give Pininfarina, particularly for I loved your studio VR that I went and had a look around. That's wonderful. If you haven't been to Pininfarina, you can go around the back and they have a little studio and it's very interactive. So can we give our friends at Pininfarina, please, a big round of applause?
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, Silvio, on that point, I think the last time any of us were here in Geneva was 2019, and Paolo Pininfarina spoke about a magic moment back in 1959 when Battista Pininfarina was with President Eisenhower, and they were talking about the future of the automobile industry and talking about, this aspect of design and aerodynamics and so on and so forth. And President Eisenhower in 1959 asked Mr. Pininfarina, what is the future of the car going to be? And Mr. Pininfarina said, electric. And this was 1959. Would you like to give us an update on that, Silvio? That's a long time ago.
That is very true indeed. But what I've been telling you might surprise you, because I will not talk about technology. What I will tell you that if we want to continue to sell cars and make people moving around, has got to be nice. Cars has got to be beautiful. I think that in the last few years, we've been always talking about technology to the extent that people have lost their interest in the cars themselves. We have not to forget what a car is. A car is something that moves people from one place to another in the most efficient and pleasurable way. I think that these big debates about technologies, adoption of different technologies and so forth, diverted the interest of some clients, I think. Because when you got to teach how to use something, I think you're going to be losing them.
Right.
You've got to give them something that is easy to use, affordable, and sustainable. And then forcing the different technologies to me wouldn't work.
Okay, so in a sense, should we perhaps be talking more about the mobility industry rather than just calling it the automotive industry? Is that something that perhaps has changed? I don't know.
Well, I think so. You see, car is freedom. You want to give people freedom to move in the best possible way. And we have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Luca, I came to your press launch. It's very well done, by the way. Everybody got their cues, all that stuff. I mean, that stuff takes a bit of rehearsal, I can tell you. And I made some notes on some things that you said. You said, this is the battle to reinvent the motor industry in Europe right now. Well, here we are in Geneva, this glory that is the Geneva International Motor Show. I know it's a bit of an awkward question, perhaps, but where is everybody else? Well, you're the chairman of ASEA.
Yeah.
Where are some of these other our absent friends?
Yeah, I actually don't understand why they decided not to come, because this has always been one of the best, if not the best, show in Europe. So all the executives of the automotive industry are always pleased in March to come over here. I remember. I've been there first time in 1992, I think, and I didn't miss one edition of the thing. So I didn't want to miss this edition with Renault. We had something to show to the people. Big, very important car. We do it for the respect of our customers. We do it for the respect of the organizer and also the media. We are an industry, also an hardware industry, so people want to touch our product. They want to interact with us. So I have to say, after 2 days in the show, of course, it's kind of reduced compared to the past.
Yeah.
But for us, egoistically, it was a very, very good choice because I think we got a big share of voice of this event.
Yes.
So
yeah.
it was a good idea to come over here.
Good. That's. I'm
I would
sure the
suggest
organisers.
to the others to think about it twice before, not coming here.
Well, when's the next time you're with the 𝗖𝗢𝗡𝗡𝗘𝗖𝗧 group then? Because you're chairing 𝗖𝗢𝗡.
Yeah.
Is that coming up soon? Are you going to be with them all? In the
I
near
think in a
future?
few days. Yeah, in a few days, like we have a board.
Perfect timing.
I'll tell them about the results in terms of return on investment.
Nice.
For Renault.
Nice.
Maybe it helps.
And I know Chris Bangle, who's next up on stage, is going to talk about what he sees, what he thinks about the Geneva show. But Peter, again, going and looking at your stand, coming to your press launch, you said many things there, and you are renowned in the industry for being at the real leading edge, the pinnacle of this engineering in and around the electric vehicle proposition now. You know, you've got a wealth of experience, not just in what you're doing now, but certainly in many companies before, arguably most notably Tesla. But you talked about race-derived technology. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think a lot has been said about technology being transferred from the racetrack to the road car. And I spent most of my life in advanced engineering. I've not seen much of that until now, very refreshingly. Lucid was the sole supplier of batteries for Formula E through the Generation 2 era, where we really transformed the sport. We supplied a battery which would enable a full race distance without the need for stopping halfway. And that made for a much more coherent and cohesive motorsport. And the great paradox was the sport was really conceived to exemplify the prowess of electrification. Until it had the right battery, it actually demonstrated the limitations of the other technology. And we learned so much there, particularly about thermal management of battery systems. And we've really been able to genuinely transfer that technology and that know-how and those chops, those technological chops, into every Lucid we've got. And the way we were able to control the thermals, we're actually able to reduce the resistance inside the battery pack. So it preconditioned at the beginning of the race, and we'd allow it to gradually heat up at the end of the race within the bandwidth of what was allowable for that battery. And that way we could get away with a smaller cooling system and less drag aerodynamic on the race car. And we've actually endowed our road cars with less resistance from that learning from the racetracks of the world. And that literally has race-derived battery technology in every Lucid road car any of our customers drive.
Great. Well, and that's going to have a nice connection to the conversation we had with the Formula E team later. And I want to put you on the spot. My job is to put you all on the spot, but don't be nervous. I know you've had a declared ambition for some time, Peter, to get to 5 miles a kilowatt hour. Forgive me for not translating that to
That's correct.
kilometers.
Yeah.
Are you there yet? Are you close to that?
Well, Lucid Air, and this is with the EPA standard, which is the more stringent US standard. This is very important. This is what's going to have a profound impact on saving the planet, because not all EVs are born equal. There's this perception that all EVs are good because there's no exhaust emissions, all gasoline is bad, and that's not true. There's a hierarchy of EVs, and some are sort of electron guzzling EVs, and they're not very good in that respect in terms of the energy they consume. And because of that, you need a bigger battery pack. So it's really important we go for as many miles as possible with as small a battery as possible. That's what Lucid's all about. That's my mission in life.
Sure.
We get to 4.74 with the pure rear-wheel drive. That's miles per kilowatt hour. But the standard's actually been made more stringent. And that's why we're seeing all the ranges of the cars getting less in the US. Not because anyone's been cheating, but because the EPA has changed its test procedure, made it more stringent, so it's more difficult to get the range. So we're at 474 now with a large luxury car like Air. We think we could get to 5 in a year or two. The real vision is to get 6 miles per kilowatt hour. That's approximately 10 kilometers per kilowatt hour. And I really think that is the holy grail that we should all be shooting for.
Yeah, and thank you. That's great to hear, Peter. And I think this is illustrative of the fact that the electric vehicle industry, the technology in and around it, I wouldn't necessarily call it nascent, but it's definitely progressing. There are some real step changes in it, and many other aspects, including charging infrastructure, charging protocols, etc., etc. So that's where, in comparing and contrast it to internal combustion, which is kind of as good as it gets, you know, there aren't going to be any new petrol stations and diesel stations built to fill up your car, but there are going to be many, many more charging facilities and charging stations. So that's one arena going upwards, the other one staying the same. Now, let's get into a tricky area, I know, but the auto industry, like many industries, is a global industry. We have Asia, let's put it like that, Europe, and America. There was a time where Asia, particularly China, was always behind the rest of the world in terms of technology and many other aspects of the mobility or auto industry. The tables have been turned. They've had an industrial strategy for 10 years called Made in China 2025, and we now have a schism. We now have this imbalance between geopolitics, legislation, the public even, on their understanding of the electric vehicle proposition. Luca, how do we align this? How do we kind of, you know, because the Chinese caught up by having a collaborative policy and a plan and executed on it. Is that just what we've got to do?
Yeah, I think so. I think that, of course, they started like 1 or 2 generations ago, right? So we have accumulated a delay, a gap in terms of building the whole ecosystem, the control of the value chain. I think one of the ways of doing that is by maybe simply to collaborate. As much as we as a Western manufacturer went to China 25, 30 years ago to actually establish the automotive industry, it's now kind of the other way around. And I think there is also space for collaboration within Europe amongst manufacturers to accelerate that kind of process. But it's a fact that, especially in the control of the upper part of the EV value chain, whether it's like access to materials, refining of materials, gigafactory capacity, etc., I think we are a little bit behind. I mean, it doesn't mean that technically we can't do it, right? If you look at the Renault 5, I think it's a product that potentially could sell in China, it could be competitive. So, but you know, to create the power and the scale that China has achieved on the EV, with the market is now like more than 8 million units every year, I think we have to accelerate. And it comes also through cooperation and also through focus. I don't know if you have heard about it, but I have created a company called 𝗪𝗪𝗧 within Renault that is only focusing on that in EVs and software. So it was a kind of a bold move from our side, but we recognize that the challenge is big and that this is a different discipline, right? It's a totally different discipline from the traditional value chain that we were coming before. So we have to learn. We have to push people and the teams to only do that day and night until they get to the level that we can then really compete globally everywhere.
Yeah. That 𝗪𝗪𝗧 sounds popular because I heard some whooping over there when you even just mentioned the name. So that was good. Silvio, your knowledge and experience, and certainly that of the company, is global. how do you think we need to find this way of collaborating whilst competing? Whether it's between companies, as Luca says, within Europe, or whether it's between continents. You've got a lot of wisdom, you've got a holistic sense of the industry, unlike perhaps, some of the other focused car manufacturers. How do you see it?
Well, let me say this. I think that when you have a market that is selling 26 million cars per year, that is China, volumes are making the difference because you can absorb the investments. So I think that if we want to balance, back to your previous question, between the different parts of the world, we've got to equalize first the level of investments that are going to be done.
Right.
I would imagine that there would be more collaboration on sharing platforms. And then it is where the difference comes into play is certainly with the elements of design. And I'm not saying this because I am the chief executive of Pininfarina.
It's good that you are.
But I'm saying this because I do think that in the end you can make a major difference between the vehicles, although the underneath is the same, right? Because you specialize, you offer different things, and you do, let's say, offer what the market wants, maintaining the distinction. Because in the end, the brand is this. I think the major thing that is going to be affecting the industry in these days is the way in which the brand equity that has been built over 100 and plus years because of ICE, or internal combustion engines, is going to be translated into electric engines, where software is making the difference. How can you convert that equity? And I think that is where I think we have to think outside of the normal way of thinking. So basically, in essence, then you have to put everything together, sharing the platforms first, right? Not forcing the technologies. Okay, I think that you should not be forcing one or the other, right? Because then the market will select the one that will be prevailing.
Yeah.
I think that it is going to be difficult. I know that it's not easy, but I think it's where the battle will be played.
Yeah. So the recurring revenue proposition of the traditional auto industry is well known to you and probably everyone in this room. Lubricants, belts, chains, all the things that are friction parts. Yeah. As we move into the electric vehicle arena, they all go, mostly go. Yeah. And therefore, we've got arguably only 2 or 3 things left. Obviously, body panels, people have accidents, it happens. But then energy and software, or, software updates, all of that stuff. Surely that then, they become a battleground, if you like, a competing arena for people to grab hold of. So I kind of inclined to ask you the question, Luca, but I want all 3 of you to chip in if you'd like. Do you think that bidirectional charging and the opportunity of energy to becoming a recurring revenue proposition is a significant part of the future of the electric auto industry?
My answer is like 30 meters away. We are the first one with the Renault 5 to put a V2G charger in Europe, okay? So it's very simple. And because we saw the opportunity, although it's a very challenging project from a cost point of view, because it's a small car, we decided to put the money into the thing because we see the benefit of the consumer. You have to understand that charging an electric car means basically doubling the electricity bill. So a car driven for 20,000 kilometers a year will consume the same electricity than a family household with 4 members. Okay, so it's good business for energy sector. And we know that the V2G with the intelligent charger, we can actually cut by 50% that kind of bill. That means that you might run a Renault 5 or another car that has a V2G basically for free. If the V2G system works and if the car is able to re-inject energy at the right time into the thing. And that's a beautiful thing for the consumer. So I am also a kind of a fan of, living, as Silvio was saying, open, openness on technology, what we call it technically, respecting the technological neutrality principle, etc. But electric cars have a lot of benefit. One of them you mentioned before, which is bad for us because we make less money in after sales with electric cars. But it's good for the customers because they will not have to repair and pay a lot, in the garage during the life cycle. The other thing is this one. So we will have to learn as an OEM to actually not only make money at the beginning where we invoice the customer, but then try to make money throughout the life cycle, even beyond the one ownership cycle of the car, until the car is recycled. And that's a different, let's say, completely different business model that we have to learn how to operate. But I can guarantee you that at least at Renault, we got the point very, very clearly.
Yeah, well, you certainly made it in the press conference. Peter, you know a thing or two about batteries. Tell me I've got this assumption right. Bidirectional charging is chemistry agnostic. It doesn't sit best in a particular LFP or NMC or something. Is that correct?
Well, the rate of charging is dependent upon chemistry, but for bidirectionality, the sort of rates you're looking at, it's pretty chemistry agnostic, yeah.
Right, okay. And do you see, as clearly Luca does, and I think many people, and let's be frank, to be fair to the Japanese, this began around the time of the tsunami, and the protocol, the CHAdeMO protocol, was from the utility company, not from the automotive companies, which is where CCS and NACS has come from. I hope I'm not being too jargonistic. They're just the way in which you plug it in and stuff. But am I right in saying that we're now at that point where there's almost like a dawn, there's an awakening? It's a bit like, hang on a sec, the battery isn't now this thing that we hear in the press and the media a lot, this bloody great big liability. This thing now is an asset. Yeah. It's an opportunity. Yes. Am I right? Is Luca and everyone else right, or are we getting carried away?
No, every Lucid is endowed with two-way charging, V2G, through our Wonderbox system. It's run at 21 kilowatts here with three-phase for Europe. And I see a huge, if you link that with big data, how it can really contribute to the whole grid of a nation state, because it can actually be used to balance out the draw on energy generation on a 24-hour cycle. And there are lots of other applications. There's for business use, it can do what's called peak shaving, so it can actually cut the peak periods of energy usage from the grid for a company, so you can actually put chargers in your car park, and when you need the energy back into the building, at maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon when all the dynos are running and all the labs are on full chat, you can draw back from the cars. And a really good analogy is I'm from Wales, and there's a power station in North Wales, Dinorwig. Oh yes. And there's a lake on the hill, and the lake is a source of potential energy, and it powers the power station at the bottom of the hill. And when there's surplus energy on the grid, it pumps the water up the hill. So there's this potential energy of water up a hill. And that's a way of thinking of the potential energy, the electrical energy that can be stored in tens of thousands of electric cars, which can contribute to the grid at appropriate times.
Yeah, I do think it's going to be huge. Silvio, now you work closely with all sorts of manufacturers. You have to understand not just the design criteria, what people want. You have to know its functionality, pricing, all of these things. And all of that work takes people, takes talent. Of course it does. And I'm sure in the audience here, we've got lots of young, talented people that are either in the industry or maybe looking at coming into it. Given this managed transition that we're now hugely part of, how are we going to make sure we've got talented people? How do we inspire particularly young people to want to be part of this mobility industry, to make it, it's always been glamorous, but perhaps maybe we see it that way and maybe the younger people don't. Can you give us a flavor of the people side of all this?
All right, that's a very nice question. First of all, let me tell you that there are still lots of youngsters that love cars.
Good.
and that I think is a very good start point. And so there is no shortage of talents. Now, in order to have these talents in our companies, I think what is important is to be much more than in the past, companies with ethics, the highest level of ethics and principles. Because I think these youngsters are looking at this, are looking at the big themes more than in the past. Maybe we were talking about this, maybe in the millennials such as I am, maybe we were talking those and then we have lost in due course. Now that I think is a very big theme. And attracting talents is not difficult. It might be difficult to retain them. There will be much more working to develop their own resume, developing certain of their ideas. And therefore, this is why I think it is important to provide them an environment where they can express themselves. And they know that they have to learn, but they are learning fast, very fast. You see generations, after 5 to 7 years that in a company, they won't really manage a big team. And I think how they can reach that level is through the use of new technologies. So, if you go back in time, just maybe 10 years ago, people were sketching 2Ds, and I think Chris might tell us that much about it. Now, what do we see? If you come to our studio, you see people with visors, and they are sculpturing the air, because they immediately start conceiving vehicles in that case already in 3D. That is a major change. These are, I think, and if you don't offer this guy, you will lose them.
Yeah, okay. We've only got a few more minutes, so there's a couple of things I want to sort of go through and change very quickly. Two industries that essentially haven't really changed much in 100 years is the auto industry and the energy industry. They are both now changing radically. We're switching from fossil fuels to renewables. We're switching from internal combustion to electric. Is there a golden opportunity to bring those two industries together? You talk about collaboration very much in some of your thought pieces I've read, in particular, Luca, where we need to coordinate these industries, these actors, these players, so that we can accelerate getting to the right place to compete with Asia, to compete with China, etc. Is there enough dialogue going on, given what we've just spoken about V2G, with the energy industry? Are they part of the discussion?
Yeah, I think that there should be a little bit more dialogue than what we have. Of course, we have companies that have, think at Tesla, and their charging infrastructure, their storage capacity. There is a lot of, things that some companies are doing. A lot of good example in China of companies that are, kind of climbing the value chain of energy. But I think this thing should be brought at the higher level, at the more structural level. I think the European authorities and governments and national governments should kind of force, let's say, different industry that are involved, in this thing to sit together. That's probably, it doesn't cost money. It's not about subvention, etc. It's just about forcing us to work for a common goal that is there, where everybody has its own interest, okay? But we have to comply, with everybody's, priority. But at the same time, this has to be the final goal, right? This is a team sport. If the guy who is doing, I don't know, you take E.ON or another energy industry in, I don't know, EDF in France, they have no business case in building a charging infrastructure. I won't sell electric cars. It's a simple example. And I think that everybody has to accept that each one of the members of this chain will have to take a part of the cake, right? Yeah. And this is not the case today, right? So everybody's trying to do its own infrastructure, its own way of storing energy and trading the thing. But we want to find a scale for that, and that's the key thing that I see. And this is limiting us. And Europe, unfortunately, is not China, it's not US. It's a very, very fragmented landscape which makes the beauty of Europe, right? But at the same time, in those kind of transition, makes us slower, the whole thing more complicated. That's the challenge that we have.
Yeah.
But I see what you see. So I see the benefit. I mean, just to what, add on what Silvio and Peter were saying. If you put 1 million electric cars with an average battery of 40, 50 kilowatts in the street, you have the equivalent of 10 megawatts of energy storage. It's a 10 big power plants. This is what it is.
Yeah.
So this thing is an asset, but I pay for the battery, I integrate it in the car, this battery can bring back energy into the thing, make a benefit to the consumer. I need to participate to the party.
Yeah, and this is the point, I think, ladies and gentlemen. The electric vehicle industry, I don't want to use the word nascent, but is at this point of all these developing things that are enhancing it, adding value. And let's just talk very quickly about, a friend of mine has a quote called, "We are in the midst of the global battery arms race." And that's about the importance and significance of the battery, who makes them, where they make them, when they make them. And let's not lose sight of the fact that what we shouldn't be doing is transferring one challenge or problem into another one. So if we're making batteries more locally, we're getting the minerals more on the continent, and we're not moving things all around the planet, that's got to be a good move. But Peter, just as we're getting towards wrapping up, you were nodding furiously when we were talking there about some of that stuff. Do you want to add something?
Well, yes, it resonates. I think that the key here is big data and algorithmic solutions for how we use that, as Luca said, this great reserve of energy, this nascent reserve, and use it to balance the grid. There's a lot of naysayers who are concerned about the extra pull on the grid. We can turn this on its head, judo style, and actually help the grid with the contribution of the cars. And the other thing is, this is what's also very important. If we can use the tech for the cars to go further with less batteries, it means less mining of these minerals in the first place. And this is, right through from mining the minerals to application with the customer, with the electric car, a much more efficient mindset.
Right. We've only got a couple of more minutes left. I can't help but say this. All four of us have got proper shoes on. Normally these days, when you go to events, you'll see CEOs with sneakers on. I don't know why there's that fashion, but look, we've actually got real shoes on. I think that in itself is quite impressive, I mean, Silvio, you're always going to look bella figura because, you're Italian.
Luca as well.
Well, indeed. I wasn't saying you weren't well dressed, Luca.
You like my shoes or what?
Okay. If I can ask you in 30 seconds, we've talked about this massive challenge. Can I quickly go up the line with you? And there's your 30-second challenge. Where are we? What happens next, Silvio?
Let me tell you this in 30 seconds. I'm a physicist by education.
Wow.
All right? I have an incredible faith on the future of science and optimism of science. I think that science will help to solve every problem. We're talking now about batteries, geopolitical issues with that. I do think that in a few years, that wouldn't be any longer a problem. This is what I think truly. Right?
Love it.
And that's it. I don't add anything.
I love it. You're an optimist and a physicist. That's a great combination. Peter.
So I'm an engineer, so I apply physics.
Lovely.
So I apply physics, and I'm very optimistic by applying physics we'll create higher tech cars and save the planet. Nice.
Well, that's a pretty good ambition. Luca?
I'm not a physicist, I'm not an engineer. So, I'm irrational in a way. That's why I work in the automotive industry. But I love it.
Yeah, well, look, I'd like to say thank you so much for... This was unscripted, by the way. Clearly, it's live. There wasn't anything in here that I was told I couldn't talk about or ask. Thank you for being candid, all of you. I know it's a complicated thing, running a big business and all the things that go with that. But can I ask the audience to thank our panel in the normal way? Thank you so much.